Today I'm going to be doing the initial review of the actual world of the Drow War, Book 1, The Gathering Storm, which, while based on a small island at the beginning, is 100% important for people to know for purposes of character background, backstory, and so on. I have with me two of my players for the campaign, Avion, who is with me there in Discord chat, and Tiburon5. And they are welcome to ask questions as the game, or as I continue moving forward with it. Obviously, I'll answer them as needed and continue moving forward from there. So, the basic premise of the Drow War, of course, is that it's designed to be used in almost any campaign setting, which is kind of cool. But the primary world is called the world of Ashfar, which is actually its own custom D&D setting. And I have not seen a whole lot of videos on YouTube about this. Surprisingly, the Drow War is a really deep story. Like, all three books are incredibly in-depth. It goes from level 1 to level 30, which is, I think, the largest campaign setting I know of from the main published stuff, especially from, like, 2004 or even a third-party publisher like Mongoose. In the sense of what the Drow War is, it actually paints the elves in a bad light instead of the humans for... like Tolkien kind of did the same thing in Lord of the Rings. In this case, the actual high elves were the bad guys initially, and the Drow were just the knives in the dark kind of people. In terms of history, the Drow have risen up several times in the past and basically declared war on the elven countries. About 1,000 years ago, the elves actually fell into decline, or started to fall into decline, and are currently stuck on their Citadel Island, dealing with their own problems and the decay/decline words of their race. Anyway, the default setting itself. God damn it, Kathy. You choose the worst time to tell me all about your little toy. Okay, shush. That's funny. He's adorable. Okay. Anyway, one important thing of note for the actual world of Ashfar is that Raise Dead, Resurrection, and spells of that category are entirely impossible to be used on normal people. It's an interesting idea that the cleric in town won't be able to raise you from the dead if you die. It's not to say that death is permanent, of course. You're a very special individual whenever you play as a player in the Drow War campaign. It's like the loudest he's ever been for you guys, honestly.
Yeah, I can really hear him.
Mm-hmm.
He's a really loud boy today.
He is a chatty boy. He just wants to tell me all about his toys.
He can hear that you're on stream.
Yep, he knows. He's just like, oh man, everybody loves a cat, right? Anyway. Oh, excuse me. So, quick excerpt, of course, from the actual book. The countries of Ashfar range from cosmopolitan democracies where races of all kinds freely mingle to entrenched bastions of tradition where the same race or class has been dominant for centuries. Actually, answering one of Avion's questions from before was, are humans widespread all across the world? The answer is yes, but some of the cultures and races are actually a lot more unaccepting of them, and since humans were not the primary driving force behind colonization of this world, they're not as domineering, if that makes sense. More specifically, they are just there, and they have their own empires and kingdoms and politics and other miscellaneous crap. Of course, the world of Ashfar also leads to a lot of interpretation by the Dungeon Master, which is a good thing for a campaign book, because if it's super strict, it forces the players into almost a bottleneck of gameplay. And that's very problematic for lots of reasons, because it makes the game kind of rigid and makes it feel like players can't actually be what they want to be for their characters.
Yeah.
In most circumstances, it's very open. And of course, I can change things about the book as I go along if I need to kind of better fit the narrative that we're trying to describe. In this case, of course, I kind of leave the first book open to my players so they get a chance to experience the world as it was kind of designed. And since the initial island that they start on is relatively small in the grand scheme of the world, it becomes less important whether they fuck up the entirety of the duchy or they help them out with what's going to happen. Of course, not trying to give away too much information. So what I'm going to do next is basically go over a few of the main countries of the world, give a quick note on how how transportation works in the world itself, and then kind of move on from there. And if people have decided on where they're living, or if any of my other players join the Discord chat at the time, they are welcome to put in their input when we go down that path. Of course, I have about 2 hours until I need to not be streaming anymore. So we got time. Civilizations from all over the world have been brought into contact with each other via the Zoth Sarandai sea gates. This has led to a global culture of suavity and acceptance in which you are just as likely to encounter a half-naked barbarian walking down the street as you are to meet a noble in his finery. Obviously, different districts of cities, the typical classism that appears in that. The point being, it's very inclusive, and barbarian cultures are typically not relegated to only rural locations. And of course, the brief descriptions and summaries of Ashfar I'm going to skip for just a moment to show off the map for those that are actually watching the stream. Joe, I assume you're actually in the stream?
I'm not at the moment.
It's all good. If you want to hop in, you can. Otherwise, I will share my...
I'll have a look.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm going to share my screen on Discord as well for those who are interested in looking via that method. But, of course, please watch the stream because it's better for getting paid eventually. Hopefully. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't think that I have your...
Oh, I think I posted my Discord in the general chat. Let me actually turn that off real quick. General Hangout. Oh, I did not, actually. Oh, crap. Let me grab my stream page real quick and do that, I suppose.
Probably a good idea.
There you go. And, of course, people who are watching the40 notice that there's probably a 40-second delay between what I say and what actually is said in stream. So if you're listening to the audio, oh my god. Also, best image ever. Okay. So, where was I? Yeah. So the world of Ashfar and its primary components. I'm actually going to... I want to rotate this, but at the same time I'm worried that if I do that, it'll be problematic later. Rotate clockwise, that's fine. Cool. And then I can just rotate it counterclockwise or rotate it clockwise if you guys have it. Oh my god. Hold on a sec. What is that? You can't eat plastic, you moron. Talk about how cats are actually kind of dumb sometimes. Cats love to eat plastic, apparently.
Of course they do.
Alright, so everybody who plays in the game, we start here in Shilhaim, which is the smallest island, as you can see, in pretty much any of the primary named locations in the world. The point being, of course, that this is the initial entry into the world, and you don't have to deal with all of the inter-kingdom politics, say of Kaldraza and Gale, or Savarth and Jahannam. Almost all of these countries have something wrong with others, but they typically don't go to war in the normal traditional sense. What these pi symbols are the sea gates, which I did mention earlier. The sea gates are literally as they sound. They are teleportation nexi that are surrounding the island of Zoth Sarandai. Every single sea gate leads to Zoth Sarandai. Every single sea gate in Zoth Sarandai leads to a different sea gate across the world. It's really interesting, and it makes it so that the elven capital of Zoth Sarandai is basically the nexus of the world. What would take months to travel from Verda to Sendra, for example, is actually only days. Because you travel from Verda to Jahannam, and then to Zoth, and then from there to here. Or, travel from Zoth to here. Doesn't really matter. Point being, it's pretty quick. That's the basic concept, of course, of the world itself. I can rotate, I guess, clockwise 3 more times. There we go. So what I'll do is I'll go over what Shilhaim actually is first, and then we can kind of work our way around the countries as they appear on the map and as they might appear in the campaign, depending on choices made by the players. Of course, really, Shilhaim doesn't have a huge description because almost all of it is contained in the 258 pages of the book. But it's a small island, notable only for being the place where a massive Drow army was defeated over 1,000 years ago, at the end of the last Equinox of Heroes. The campaign does begin during or just before an Equinox of Heroes, which is an alignment of the stars that the Starborn are. Each player plays a member of the Starborn template, which I don't know if my players have all gotten the memo on that one, but I'll be explaining that in this stream as well. And I believe somebody joined us. Yes, we have Omni in here now as well. Hello, Omni.
Hey,
I am
what's up?
Streaming right now. Doing all right.
Oh, cool.
Of course, you're welcome to hop into the Twitch, and you're also welcome to stay in Discord. Like I mentioned before, if you guys have questions about stuff as it comes up, I can open up the forum for that and answer questions about each country in the world as they go along, as well as what you guys are doing as players. Anyway, explanations about the countries, of course, will be following, but I'll explain the Equinox of Heroes thing after I read about Shilhaim. It is independent, although the Kingdom of Kaldraza has long considered it a part of itself and is keen to recover it, hence, internal politics going on. It is a kingdom of its own for all intents and purposes in terms of countries. The capital of Shilhaim is Saragost, a walled city that hosts a fortified harbor. Of course, the fortified harbor is directly facing Kaldraza, which is part of the reason why they claim it as their own country. Anyway, politics aside, what the players play in this game is the Starborn, like I mentioned before. The Pantheon, of course, is very different. We'll go over the gods here a little bit later, and we have the Starborn. Okay, so this section describes the rules needed to create a Starborn character. I'm going to give a quick once-over of what the Starborn are. And of course the template stuff, if people are able to jump into their characters and add their own star sign. It's kind of like astrology in the sense that you get your own stuff. I know that Omni's already picked his. He is a Watchman, which is essentially December in this world. And it's one of the more leadership-focused of the Starborn traits. Starborn, of course, being a template that can be applied to any living corporeal creature. 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons rules are standard. You apply it to your humanoid or outsider native race and continue moving forward from there. Essentially, every Starborn has a birthmark, which they are born with. They don't just have it randomly. And this birthmark is not uncommon, but it is something that is rare enough that it's an important event. If a person has a child with a birthmark, they are potentially being the key word, marked by the gods for greatness, which is what our player characters happen to be, of course. This birthmark takes the shape of whatever star sign they actually have. It's basically a dotted freckle of their constellation, and it's usually about the size of 3 fingers of a hand placed on the skin, but can be anywhere from that size to as large as both of your hands splayed out. Or essentially, I guess if you're looking at a physical book, about this big. And of course, for those watching my stream, you can't see in real time, so I'm actually going to share my screen like normal. That way you guys can see a little bit more in real time what's going on. And if you jump into the stream as well, great for viewers, blah, blah, blah. You know the stuff. Okay, the birthmark is awesome. I absolutely love the idea of it, and it's kind of flavorful. Here's an example of a really large one, which I believe that one is the satyr. Another ability that they have that's incredibly useful is sensing the host. The host are essentially the anti-Starborn, something that is specific to the Drow race. The Drow are born with kind of a selection by She, or Lolth as people might know her, the goddess of the Drow. The host are basically anti-Starborn in the sense that they have the same powers, they have the same capabilities, and they can be raised from the dead, just like the Starborn can. Also, every Starborn is linked to an item known as a signature item. Now, this, of course, is information that the players technically know, but don't know as characters, so it's kind of a weird back and forth thing. The signature item is your preferred weapon, specifically weapon, not item. And this weapon is something that exists in the world, and it's something that I place in the world alongside guidelines in this book. You know, well, sort of know, you have a compulsion to find your item when you are near it. And of course, in this case, it says, within 5 miles of an unclaimed signature item, the Starborn experiences a faint and strange sensation of longing. There is, however, no indication of why they are feeling this sensation or what it means. If within 10 feet of an unclaimed signature weapon, the Starborn experiences a stronger sensation that something is rightfully their property and it's close at hand, although they gain no specific details as to the distance or direction. You know, it's not Accio signature item, it's where the hell is this? I need to find it.
So it's kind of like the star sign for basically, if I want my character to be like, looking for adventure or looking for some sort of prize, then it'd probably be the ideal star sign to go for.
Are you looking at the star signs right now?
Yeah, I'm looking at yours.
My screen. Cool. So, sort of, I mean, the signature item, it's not based on your star sign. It's your item that you pick. So, for example, you picked a longsword as your primary weapon, and I asked you, is that what you would prefer? And you said yes. So you chose weapon focus, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of phased out for a second.
Hey, totally okay.
I heard the star signs. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna choose the, I think it's the rose one.
The rose, yeah. I think Kazuko is also going for the rose. It's fine, of course. You can all be born under the same star sign if you really wanted to, or you could be born under different ones. The powers are different, and that's the point. Yeah. The final ability of the Starborn template is the Star Soul, which allows you to be recovered from death if you die. Only a Starborn can learn Resurrection, True Resurrection, Raise Dead, and Reincarnate, and only a Starborn can be raised back by going to what are called the Standing Stones. The Standing Stones are basically giant, I want to say Stonehenge-like things that have each of the star symbols on them. If you are dead and taken to a starstone, your starstone, it will revive you. Of course, with normal level loss, like in any game, but that is a thing that happens. And of course, Avion is not familiar with 3.5. In 3.5, if you die, you permanently lose a level unless you get True Resurrection cast upon you.
I was gonna say, I heard about you was like stone. I was like, reminds me of.
It can be painful, yes. Of course, the point is, don't die as much as possible. I am mostly on your side, but I am using the book, and the book might kill you if you're not careful.
Yeah.
Anyway, the patron stars, of course, you're all magically linked to an actual star and its constellation in the heavens of Ashfar. They are the material incarnation of that star's essence, and more than one person can be an avatar of each star. It doesn't actually matter. A lot of people want to be unique, and that's fine. And of course, that's a conversation your players should have with each other, which star they want, and if they want it to be theirs and theirs alone. Ironically, it seems like the Watchman isn't exactly the most popular choice. I'm not sure what Joe is thinking of picking, but we're getting into the constellations now so we can actually have that conversation. And I'll open up the forum now for any questions you guys might have about signature items or the Starborn template. Omni or Joe, if you guys have anything.
I might have like a few ponderings.
Sure.
But I don't know if it would soil my experience with the campaign.
It depends on that, and I'll tell you if I can't answer your question.
Okay, thank you for that. So, is there a direct or directly indirect, I guess you could say, effect in choosing a certain sign? I'm not changing my decision based on your answer, by the way.
Sort of. There are story events that apply to one sign over another occasionally, but the game is very good about keeping them fairly balanced and allowing me to adjust it as needed. But certain story events do want certain signs. And of course, time of year does make a slight difference as well, but that's a hidden stat thing that I know about. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? Give it a moment, of course. Joe, I assume you're okay?
Yeah. Are there specific signature items then that we should be looking through?
What I want you to do is pick a weapon that your character is familiar with, capable of using, and really enjoys as a character, and send it to me via DM. Specifically, what we say here, signature items are objects that are part of the Starborn character's personal legend, completely bound to them and as much a part of the star's essence as the character themselves. Signature items are like magic items that evolve. As the characters advance in experience, their signature items gain new powers and enhancements. At the start of the game, the player characters do not have any of their signature items. Over the course of the story, they must find and retrieve the items that once belonged to their former avatars. The first of these is found somewhere on Chilhaim. Pick a weapon, any weapon that you are familiar with, and send it to me, and I will make sure that it is included in the signature item list. And where I put it is up to me.
Brass knuckles.
You could do brass knuckles. Of course, brass knuckles suck.
Yeah. The brass knuckles are basically a replacement for the improved unarmed strike feat.
Mm-hmm. They make you armed while unarmed, and they deal lethal damage in the normal punch, but they aren't as powerful as, say, like a monk's fist. A monk deals a d6, and a normal unarmed strike deals a d3. You do the math.
Yep.
Anyway, let's take a look at the constellations individually now, and of course, if I know that you are taking this constellation, I will mention you, or your equivalent player, for that. So far, I know of only 2, and, well, maybe 3 if Avion's going with what he said. Okay, first up is the Great Wolf. Of course, the Great Wolf is essentially January in this universe. And January, the wolf's head bears its teeth, a single star forming the gleam in its eye. That star is the star that the Great Wolf is incarnate of. Basically, imagine a constellation that looks kind of like a wolf's head, kind of like how the Big Dipper looks kind of like a pan. Those born under the wolf sign are usually practical, down-to-earth people with a tendency to be harsh, having contempt for the soft and weak. They are fiercely protective of their few true friends and allies. Think, I'm a loyal guy who really likes his friends. It is a positive sign, but also a bad sign. Middle of winter, everything sucks, we're starving and cold, but it's also devouring the old year, so the new year can begin anew. The unicorn. It's a star-tipped horn. Of course, imagine a small horse up in the sky based on the stars. And that tip of the horn is our favorite intrepid hero who picks this star sign. The horn is reminiscent of the icicles of winter, breaks the horizon as the snowdrops break the cold earth. It is as cold, bright, and pure as the ice, but brings the promise of renewal. People born under the unicorn are enthusiastic, keen, and direct. They can become obsessive when they want something. They stop at nothing to get it. They detest circumlocution and petty debate when there is action to be taken. Of course, that's a fucking word I didn't know. So, hold on a second. It is the use of many words where fewer would do. That's what this book kind of entails sometimes. Okay. But yeah, they like to talk, is kind of their whole thing. I'm not going to go over the benefits individually just yet, because this is more for roleplay purposes that you pick this. Although, if you want your benefit to be beneficial to you, we can talk. Anyway, the Delver is March, effectively, in this universe's calendar. The earth is now softened after the winter frosts. The symbol of a man, or as some say, a dwarf, digging through the ground represents the sowing of time, when the farmers plant seeds in the soil. A star gleams at the tip of his shovel. Again, that gleaming star is you. Those born under the sign are often curious, inquisitive people with a desire to look below the surface and find out the secrets of others. This, of course, secrets of others being, hey, what makes you tick? Not, tell me everything about you. They're not creepy, they're just curious. 4 is the wave. The wave, of course, exactly as it sounds, it's a wave crashing. It rains and floodwaters that follow the full thaws of spring. The wave is a symbol of rushing water and signals the beginning of a season of safe sea voyaging. Usually, maritime trade is done during, the spring through the fall months. Usually halfway through fall, because you don't know when winter is actually going to strike. And travel during the big storm times, especially hurricane season, is a horrible idea. Even in real life. Hell, even in modern times. Those born under the wave tend to be graceful, empathic people, although like the waters, they can also be deceptive and shallow. So, anything from, I want to say Valley Girl, but that's horribly, sexist. but somebody who's really shallow, who has like no real personality and bases everything on superficial stuff, to somebody as deep and thoughtful as Socrates. And I'm not talking about John. Sorry. With that, we go to the satyr, which is essentially May. May is full life in full bloom, spring being kind of the primary thing about May in real life. Blood runs hot in man and beast alike. The satyr is the sign of animal energy, fully restored to life. It is an exultant sign, representing joy in one's own strength and the freedom to exercise it. In this case, the satyr, of course, is the symbology of this right here, the satyr's horns, as well as the possible optical illusion created by the symbol. Those who have the satyr as their birth sign enjoy life to the fullest. Typically, they're very passionate, outgoing people. They can sometimes annoy people by taking nothing seriously, treating life as one big joke. When they're in the mood to be cruel, they can be viciously sadistic in the name of their own fun. Think like a fae, except not as intense. The rose, this is actually Kazuko's sign. The rose is the beauty of the blossoming earth made manifest in the heavens, although its thorns also symbolize treachery and cruelty for its own sake. The people of the rose are often physically attractive and able to manipulate those around them by subtle cues. They make good leaders, whether heroes or villains. And of course, this is the second of the two leadership-focused signs. The rose is a lot more specific to movement and grace, whereas the watchman is a lot more specific to action and decision. The fire drake is essentially July. July being kind of a fiery time when summer starts. The fire drake is the old name of a dragon, specifically one who breathes flame. This sign symbolizes the searing heat of summer. It also calls to mind the dim memory of the time when dragons would visit the towns of men to receive tribute. This would always be in the 7th month, as the herds and crops were at their fullest then, allowing for the greatest plunder. Dragons aren't so common much anymore in the world. They still exist, of course, and they're still around, with younger versions of themselves kind of growing and dying as adventurers come and kill them. But, just like any fantasy world, dragons do occasionally show up, terrorize a village for several years, adventurers show up, kill it, you know the drill. Those born fire drakes are difficult to read. They conceal deep thoughts behind placid faces and can smolder with resentment for years before taking action. This, of course, paints them in kind of a bad light. More often than not, they are kind of the implacable people, the quiet types. They are usually rational and calm, although they break into furious fits of passion when provoked or stirred. Don't, poke the buttons of the fire drake or he'll punch you in the nose kind of thing. Or be that type of person who's actually terrifying. Like, they're super calm most of the time, but if you provoke them enough, they say the most scathing thing you could ever hear. That type of thing. The Reaper appears at the end of the summer, the figure of a tall man with a sweeping scythe. He stands for hard work, the fruits of labor, and the reward or punishment that waits for you after death. The point of the Reaper is that he is not a symbol of death, and not sad death especially. He kind of represents the inevitability, the harvest, which is what he's supposed to symbolize in real life, but people tend to paint him like a skeleton who's terrifying. It's an auspicious sign to be born under, signifying the power to conquer whatever lies before you. Interesting that it says that, because you conquer what lies before you in the sense that the reaper or the farmer reaps his land. You conquer it, essentially. Those born under the reaper's scythe are strong-willed, sometimes to the point of bullheadedness. They do not give up easily. Of course, you want to be stubborn, like a Leo in real life. Of course, August and Leo. That's probably a good one to pick. But don't make it so that you are actively hurting your party in the process. The flail is both the tool and the tool that threshes the barley and the weapon of the same name. As the flail rises in the sky, the earth beneath is scourged by wind and rain. Summer is over, and the hardships of the darker months begin. This, of course, signifies the end of summer. Or in September in real life, it's the signifying the beginning of fall, and kind of the middle of the harvest season for purposes of actual farming. Those who have more experience with farming, of course, I'm not a farmer. I never grew up on a farm. I just know the basic concept. Those born in the flail are meticulous and focused. They are very thorough in their investigations and tend to stick doggedly to a task until it is achieved. They make excellent researchers. Many wizards are born under this sign. Kind of think of the idea of like a single-minded researcher, cloistered scholar, that type of thing. you typically see people born under the flail who are like, I need to get this done. And then, they move on to other things. It's kind of like the Virgo, as they say in real life. Of course, people who believe in the astrology signs do their own stuff, but that's kind of the point of the earth signs. The Spinner is one of the more mysterious signs. Ironically, they seem to have taken Scorpio and Libra and swapped them in this universe, and I'll kind of explain that as we go along. The more mysterious signs, a huge spider with 8 closely clustered stars for eyes. The common interpretation is that the spider stores up food and weaves webs, reflecting the work of stockpiling and cloth spinning that happens at this time. Typically winter, people and seamstresses are making coats and blankets for winter, because they tend to wear out pretty quick. Other interpretations see the spinner as a sign of magic, weaving the web of fate and trapping the unsuspecting with charms, kind of like your typical trickster god type thing. Again, these aren't gods, though. Spinners are patient people by nature who enjoy making plans and hatching plots. They bide their time for a long while before taking quick, decisive action. If you like to play a thinker character, this one's actually a pretty good one to play. Again, don't be a dick about it, your typical stuff. The Spectre. The 11th month is said to be of ill omen. The animals are slaughtered on its first day in the blood harvest, which is an actual holiday that they celebrate at the beginning of the 11th month. By the end of the month, the bitter cold of the season has usually claimed its first victims. The sign of the Spectre is a grim reminder of death, which also has its place in the order of things. It also recalls the belief that the souls of the dead are believed to visit the world during this month, to make sure they have not been forgotten. Whether this is true or not is entirely up to the Dungeon Master. That's not mentioned, but it is something that does come up at some point. And you guys will find out, I suppose. Those born under the sign of the Spectre seem to be older than their true age, as if they're recalling some previous life. Typically, people who are wiser than they obviously are. Say, like an 18-year-old who speaks like a 30-year-old or something like that. This is kind of an interesting sign, and you can come up with some really interesting character concepts with the Spectre. I actually built my first player in this campaign setting under the Spectre, and he was a 22-year-old fire wizard who didn't like burning things so much as he was practical about it. The Watchman is the 12th month. This, of course, is Omni and his decision. 16 stars form the shape of a man holding a lantern aloft. His lantern is the brightest star in the sky and the symbol of hope through the winter months. He's also the North Star. Kind of like how the Big Dipper takes part with the North Star, this is the exact same situation, and the light of the lantern also happens to be the North Star, which is kind of an interesting concept. Characters born under the Watchman make natural leaders. They have nigh unshakable confidence in themselves, which radiates to those around them. The leadership ability makes them superb teachers, battle leaders, and even criminal bosses. Of course, depends on how you want to be built. Also, Omni, cool. Yeah. So, of course, the host, nodes, these are the things I was talking about with the standing stones, and I'll explain a little bit about the victory point thing here in a bit. This, of course, is going to be later. Nodes are where, of course, the stars are focused on Earth. Like I said, kind of like a Stonehenge type thing if you're looking at this image here. And the stars do focus on them at different points during the year, especially during the equinox, or should I say the middle of the month that they are in. You see these stars align with their specific symbol. The world almost seems tidally locked with every single star in the sky. For physics experts, this is ridiculous, but it's a fantasy setting, so whatever. For that, of course, I'll open up the forum to anybody that has questions about the specifics of these star signs. I do believe Avion has not picked one yet, but you mentioned the rose, and I don't know if Joe has picked one either.
I think I'm going to choose the wolf one at the beginning.
The Great Wolf? Not a bad call.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'm assuming your character is looking to be a bit more like a practical individual in general.
I just heard it, the first one. It was like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like
the benefit of this one, you get a +1... sorry, go ahead.
Also, I don't really want to be the same one as because you guys said I want to be a bit more unique. And, yeah.
Understandable. So your benefit, if you choose the Great Wolf, once per day, you may take either of the two abilities I'm about to describe. And of course, you just tell me you're using it. Before or after a roll is fine. The rules do technically specify that before is the rule, but whatever. It doesn't really matter to me, and who actually follows that most of the time anyway?
Yeah.
Anyway, the benefit is a +1 luck bonus on a single attack roll, or plus 1d4 additional damage to any damage roll. It's actually pretty nice, because early on, most monsters have not very much HP, but a little bit more than the players. So if you say, I deal 7 damage, well, it doesn't die. Well, I'm going to roll this d4. Is it dead now?
Yeah.
That's great for bosses. And you're probably going to be pretty important in terms of dealing with them as a DPS player anyway. Joe, any questions about the star signs or anything you're thinking about taking?
I'm thinking about taking the Spectre.
The Spectre. All right. That's an interesting choice, actually. Not many people pick the Spectre. Why?
Yeah. Well, feels like it's something that, oddly, even though it says it's about death, it feels like it fits the factotum well because of good bonuses to skill checks.
Mechanically, absolutely.
The entropy of life keeps the ball rolling as well.
Yeah.
It is a necessity, just like birth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you're taking like a character concept into account, like I said, my fire wizard was a very practical fire mage. His entire point was not burn, burn, burn. It was more flames feed the fire of life. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's a true definition of how life is. It spreads and grows and can destroy if it's not careful or not controlled. As a factotum, depending on your character's personal philosophy, you can do all sorts of stuff with this. But typically you'd want your character to probably be a well-read individual who might be younger than they might seem to be initially. Mm-hmm. Of course, you've already read the mechanics on this, but for the stream purposes, if anybody can't actually read this, the benefit is a +2 luck bonus to a single will saving throw or a +2 luck bonus to any skill check, again, once per day. Mm-hmm. So if you're really feeling like you need to hit that skill check, you just got to go like, I'm going to use my Spectre. And away we go.
Yeah. I was also thinking about the flail.
The flail's not a bad call either. That one is kind of a single instant success type thing. Going over the instant successes, because I'll go over the Watchmen here in just a second, and I do believe... Nope, it doesn't actually mention that. So I'll talk about that in a second. Of course, if we had more of my players in the chat, then it might be useful to kind of do that. Let me take a look at my server stuff here real quick.
Yeah, because the automatic success is just a minimum success.
And I would really like it if Kazuko could join us, but I'm not sure if they are actually able to. Of course, if they're watching the stream, then they're going to hear this in like 40 seconds, and we'll have Kazuko in the chat. Okay. Also, for people who are doing the thing. So, quick note on stuff. The Watchmen, their ability is very leadership-focused, like I mentioned before. They get a +2 luck bonus to any other character's skill check, or a +1 luck bonus to any other character's saving throw. So, it's a response. It's kind of like an immediate action. If you see your friend about to get hit by a fireball, you know that their reflex save isn't great. Bam, Watchman bonus. I'm looking out for you, buddy. And of course, if you're playing a teacher-style character, you might feel in command or in control of most of the battlefield situations, but might not feel comfortable in more social ones. It's kind of the roses thing, but it's up to you. And obviously, communication between your players is key, so people don't step on each other's toes. As for the whole immediate success on skill checks thing, which if people are looking at these as hawk-eyed individuals, you'll start to notice that. The Delver, I'll use this as the example, a +2 luck bonus on a single fortitude saving throw, really nice to have, or you can do an automatic success on a single strength-based skill check. The rule on that is any skill check that gives an automatic success, as it says right here, gives the minimum result necessary to indicate success, no more. This ability can only be used when the skill check DC is 20 or less, and it's my job as the Dungeon Master to tell you whether your ability can be applied if you ask. Basically, you don't waste it. So, for example, if I'm saying, like, make a climb check and you're a Delver, you say, I want to do my instant success. Well, this one's kind of a sheer ice wall, and it's like 50 feet up, and it's super slippery and wet. I doubt that's going to be a DC 20. It's probably going to be DC like 22. So, at best, I'd give you like a double circumstance bonus to it, assuming we actually needed it to happen or you wanted it to happen for thematic purposes. But as a rule of thumb, if it's above DC 20, it's not going to happen. Okay. Victory points is a thing. So, for the players, well, I'll wait until Kazuko joins, if Kazuko joins. So, let's go over the gods next. The gods are interesting in this universe, and it's a very custom pantheon. However, none of these gods have stats for deities and demigods purposes, so no going up and killing Bledewees for no reason. Please don't do that. I'd have to make stats, and I really hate that.
What? Don't do what now?
Don't go up to space and kill Bledewees for no reason.
Okay, yeah, don't worry. Not planning on it.
Absolutely
I
not.
have 7th level spells. I make no promises.
I mean, you make... I mean, I trust you
As long
enough.
as I don't pull off Maxwell's interdimensional battering ram.
Again, the whole idea of sending the Tarask through a gate at a god seems like it would be required to have the goddess of trickery on your side for that.
Well, clearly you don't trust me that much, because I can't have a crescent knife. Ooh.
Ooh. Dragon Magazine 245, stupid broken item. Anyway, whatever. Goddamn, too many of those stupid books. I have to look up every item that Joe shows me now. Anyway. All right.
Hey, I warned you, and I asked specifically.
No, I'm
'cause
just
I
being
knew
a
it
shit,
could
man.
be a problem.
It's totally okay. Admittedly, I appreciate that because it helps quite a bit for purposes of organization. Hell, that knife is terrifying. Okay.
It certainly can be on the right character.
Mhm.
Honestly, I hadn't even thought of the surging with it. I was just like, oh, this is kind of like a pseudo flurry of blows that makes Iaijutsu focus better.
Mhm.
Cool. That was
Oh,
all
boy.
I was thinking.
Oh boy.
what they
Iaijutsu
all
focus.
say.
Yeah, well, the fact that Iaijutsu focus applies to your opponent being struck every time in the round, in addition to the surging of the factotum, in addition, I should stop telling people how to break their 3.5 characters. If you're one of those players, you're an asshole, and I hate you. Obviously, Joe is not one of those players because he talked to me about it before we got to that point. And, you know, it's something that was very specific. It's a cool item, but don't play that, guy. Don't deal 1,400 damage in a single round because you're a factotum at level 12 who doesn't know any better.
I usually try not to.
Again, Joe is my assistant dungeon master in most circumstances because I trust their judgments. And of course, they stop a couple people from doing crazy broken shit when I don't have time to look it up myself. I.e., one of my players' attempts at being a half-giant psychic warrior with some stupid stun lock powers. Okay, back to business. So, Pantheons of Ashfar. The Ashfar campaign's background is what we're going to be using. I'm actually going full into this campaign setting, and I assume that nobody in this group, except maybe D, actually knows most of the system. Now, he is very good about meta-knowledge. That's one of the reasons why he's part of the campaign and doesn't metagame. I've played years with him, so... Anyway, Avalon is the name of the Pantheon itself. This is the series of gods that we are about to look at, and primarily they are worshipped in Kaldraza and Chilhaim. Of course, most people know them by their base names, and almost every country in the world at least knows who they are. Of course, for our purposes, just pick one of those gods if you want to pick one, and then, you know, if you have a special regional name, I can go through the rest of the book and do this individually with you. And I'm not going to be giving every single detail about Ashfar anyway, because that'd take years. Okay. The first god, of course, is the high god of the Pantheon, Aranu, a personification of the sun, basically Pelor, who bears a spear of golden fire. He's the lawmaker of the gods, setting limits on what even the divine beings may do. Aranu is the special patron deity of kings and tribal chiefs. His domains, for clerical purposes, sun, law, war, and protection, which is almost exactly what Pelor's are, except for one of them. Next up, of course, is Bledewees. Bledewees is the flower maiden of spring rain. Of course, I say jokes about killing her because she was the first one that I saw. Ironically, you wouldn't want to kill her because she's super cool. She is the special patron goddess of unmarried maidens. She brings life to the earth after the ravages of winter, blessing earth with waters that cause plants to ripen. She is also a goddess of wells and rivers, who sends the waters of the natural springs for the good of men. Priestesses of Bledewees must be virginal and often go crowned with flowers as part of their regalia. She is a very good deity. She's actually like the purest example of a good deity in this universe. Good, healing earth and water. Pretty much your standard, I'm like a nature goddess but not kind of person. Farina is actually very fun. She is usually the patron goddess of most of our like paladins or fighters. but she is the quick-tempered, scarlet-haired goddess of the hearth and battle. She's compared to the sudden spark that shoots from fire and burns down your house when you aren't looking. She represents the stubborn, selfish side of humanity and is the goddess of envy, resentment, and grudges, although she's also the fiery spirit that inspires you to fight to your last breath. Chaotic neutral, of course, but that's kind of the nature of fire anyway. And her domains, fire, war, chaos, and trickery. Trickery is kind of funny because fire is not very subtle. But it makes sense, with envy and resentment, you kind of hold that inside and keep it to yourself type thing. Gahira is the goddess of the north wind, the goddess of hunger, leanness, want, and desolation. She is portrayed as an old woman with a lean face and scraggly hair. She is mostly propitiated rather than worshipped. People know of her, but don't openly worship her. She is, with offerings left for her as the evenings begin to grow dark, so that she will not blow too fiercely in the winter months. Men do not like to speak of her by name and refer to her instead by her title, the Witch of November, which is an awesome name. I wouldn't mind being called the Witch of November. Anyway, her domains are air, evil, destruction, and death. Hernun is my favorite god. Hernun is the god of the hunt, who is eternally locked in the chase to bring down his brother Wohun. Sometimes one brother will win, sometimes the other, but the hunt always begins afresh. If anyone knows the legend of the Wild Hunt, this is actually basically that. Hernun represents man at his most basic, contending with the wild. Druids often revere him, although the more chaotic ones favor Wohun. He is represented as a powerfully built man with antlers atop his head in honor of the beasts he hunts. For those who are a fan of Total War Fantasy, or Warhammer Fantasy words, everybody knows the great hunt that Orion runs for the Wood Elves, or those who know of the great hunt that Orion runs. And this is basically a similar situation, but instead of hunting a great white stag, it's brothers hunting brother. Their domain is animal, protection, travel, and strength. Very much a druid god, pure neutral, and a bow user. Old Hakon is the god of the Walker of the Plains. He's a muddy brown in color and the grandfather of all the gods. Unlike them, he did not stay in the heavens and instead chose to wander the earth continually, examining the strange creation that he had made. It is said that Hakon placed megaliths along his path to mark where he had been, giving rise to the legend of invisible lines of force that crisscross the countryside. Hakon actually is a very interesting deity in more of the main mythos of this storyline. And whether or not the crisscrossing planes of force exist depends on the class that you play. Most people don't interpret Hakon as a real thing outside of being kind of like Fizban from the Dragonlance Chronicles. He's an avatar of a deity who just so happens to be an incredibly powerful ancient wizard who watches more than does anything. His domains are travel, earth, magic, and protection, so he's one of the primary gods of magic, and people who revere him are often wizards or clerics that have a special focus towards more arcane matters. Hombel is the innkeeper, the storesman, the god of preserving things. He is the one who gives you your due. As such, he's the god of justice, especially the kind that's often called karma. And of course, what you give out, you get. He is represented as a fat, jolly man with a sack over his shoulder. In the abstract, he is symbolized by a set of scales. Essentially, think Santa Claus, but if he was a god, and think the Lady of Justice if she was Santa Claus. Immediately, his domains are good, law, protection, and strength, and he's, of course, a lawful good deity, but does have kind of a neutral streak about him in most of the mythos about him. Merithron. The bearded Merithron is the god of bards, sometimes called the Charmer. In legends, he is so persuasive that he can change the very machinery of the universe to suit himself simply by talking to it. Rogues often favor Merithron, as he embodies the charm and panache that lets you talk your way out of a sticky situation. The story of Merithron is actually very interesting. He actually convinced Hakon to allow him to... he allowed him to craft a piece of the universe, basically allow trickery to exist. And as the god of main trickery and knowledge, he's very entertaining. The domains of knowledge, luck, magic, and trickery are his, of course. He is a good deity by nature. He doesn't mean to be problematic, but you know how fun pranks can sometimes go awry, especially if you put the bucket on the head and suddenly somebody's bleeding. Wandul is the holly-crowned god of winter, the god of the cold and the dark. He comes when darkness begins to grow greater than the light. As with many of the darker gods of the Pantheon, the only time when he is worshipped is when people want him to stay away. Worshippers of Wandul are few, and usually fighters or barbarians who revere him as a challenging, grim deity of strength. Some humans believe that Wandul was originally a god of the giants left behind from an earlier time, before Hikun. The truth behind that is its own thing. Of course, deities and cosmology don't really play a huge part in this outside of their minor influences on clerics. Domains, of course, death, destruction, plant, and strength. He is a lawful evil deity, kind of the strong iron fist, which is literally his symbol. Funnily enough, it's embossed with mistletoe. Wuhun is the brother of Hernun, as we spoke about before. He's the god of the wild things. He is not fully human and has the ears and teeth of a wolf. There is nothing of civilization about him. The only worshippers of Wuhun are druids and those who live who live their lives outdoors. Everyone else is content to honor him for what he is, the wild animal nature that they have left behind. Wuhun's fun. He's kind of like, what's his name? God. Can someone help me with this one? It's one of the gods from Skyrim. If anyone's still listening. No, you're all there.
Are you talking about the guy who like made the Wabbajack?
No, that's Sheogorath.
No, yeah, I was about to say.
It's the god of the hunt, basically. He's the Daedra of the hunt. It doesn't matter. He made the werewolves.
I know exactly what you're talking about. The name escapes me.
Exactly, right? It's like the worst timing. I believe it starts with an H as well, which is kind of the problem. Anyway, whatever. Domains, animal, trickery, chaos, and strength. His alignment is chaotic neutral. You know, chaos and neutrality being kind of a hand-in-hand type thing for purposes of animalistic fury. But he's an interesting god. He's one of the gods that few druids worship, but when they do worship them, they're the most terrifying druids in the world. Yosa, Charmweaver, is the goddess of all crafters and makers, from the blacksmith and woodcarver to the seamstresses and stonemasons. She is depicted as a statuesque woman with long scarlet hair, bearing the wheel that is her sacred symbol. The wheel represents all crafts, being simultaneously the potter's wheel, the spinner's threadle, and the wagoner's cartwheel. Hers is knowledge that is passed down through the home, and not just the simple business of managing a house, but the crafter's art, vitally important in a cottage, industry in which each home is also a place of business. Essentially, take the seamstress, who uses her spinning wheel, who makes the clothes for her family. Take the potter, who creates the pottery that they go to the well and fill up for their houses. Take the wagon wheel of the merchant. Yosa is their patron. As the goddess who manipulates matter into new patterns, she is also a goddess of magic and weaving the threads of invisible force. When we talked about the invisible force of Hikun, this, of course, is a slightly different thing. This is the threads of reality, not the threads of powerful crisscross. Clerics of Yosa favor the magic of the hearth and home above more convoluted rituals of high magic. Images of Yosa in clay are often kept above the hearth, beside those of Hambul, to protect the houses. Hambul and Yosa are married. She is lawful good. She is of law, magic, knowledge, and protection. And they, of course, together create the purest definition of civilization as we know it. Yosa is very fun. I like Yosa a lot. Her personality is kind of funny, too. She's a bit of a jokester. Not like in the sense that she jokes like a rogue, but in the sense that she likes to play little pranks on people who don't take industry seriously. The next pantheon is the Calistan Pantheon, named after the now-destroyed holy elven city of Calista, which was on Zos Sarandai, where all of the gods of elvenkind were worshipped together, includes all the deities described below. These deities, of course, are typically elven in worship, but of course humans and other races that were once subjugated by the elves of Ashfar have fallen into worshipping them occasionally as well. If I recall correctly, Avion is actually a patron of a different god. The Paladin, sorry, that was actually you, Omni. You were doing Wandul, correct?
I'm going with Wandul for my paladin's patron.
And of course, Wandul being a lawful evil deity, typically you have kind of a weird disconnect in that situation. Although I am allowing a kind of, I guess, a different take on how Wandul works as a character philosophy, which does actually match up with the way that half-orcs tend to work. If you want to explain yourself, you totally can. Because I think the story is very interesting. Yeah, right? If you want, I can just move on, and you can collect your thoughts and explain yourself a little later, or, I can wait a minute.
Yeah, just give it a minute or two, and I can, explain. You can go ahead for a bit, and then I'll let you know.
Cool. Of course, wait until I'm done with the next god at that point. Alright. Arosi is the pale goddess of intoxication. As such, she is both honored and feared by elven society, honored for the rapture her gifts bring, and feared for the dangerous rage that can result. Her image is placed upon chalices and drinking vessels in order to secure her blessing and remind her that she is not forgotten. Among the elves, it is customary when drinking at a formal occasion to pour at least one bottle of wine on the ground in honor of fair Arosi as a libation. Her patronage extends to all things that appear enticing and yet conceal peril for the unwise, such as flowers that are beautiful but can secrete poison. She is not evil, but she is dangerous. She takes the form of a beautiful, slender elven woman with ice blonde hair and a deceptively innocent smile. The Drow honor Arosi both as the goddess of drug-induced debauchery and as the poisons they rely on so much. The alcohol itself, Arosi is not a force of evil, although evil beings are among her most fervent worshippers. Again, think of it like a Slaneshi cult, except instead of being a god of chaos and absolute heresy, it's a bit nicer than that. Only vegetable poisons are under the dominion of Arosi. Poisons of animal origin, especially those of spiders, are under the direct dominion of She. She being, of course, the goddess of the Drow, or Lolth as people would know her. Her domains are chaos, luck, plant, and trickery, and very much so for everything involved. She's a very fun god, too.
I like that she's luck.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's uncertain whether the flower you're going to eat is going to kill you or not. Go ahead, sir.
It's like just grabbing some berries in the forest, well...
Arosi be with me.
Yeah.
Alright, Brith. When the star goddess Nuith first attempted to create a light for her children on Earth to see, she gave birth to the goddess Lumia. The moon. Although the elves saw well enough by the silver light of Lumia, it was too changeable and faint for the other creatures, and so Nuith focused her will and created the brilliant light of Brith. Now, this is the elven interpretation of the sun deity, mind you. Of course, the Pantheons do exist, just like in any D&D campaign. And pardon my sudden silence there, I sneezed. Brith is the sun god and the Castellan is the sun god of the Castellan Pantheon and the chief deity of all. With the exception of the insane god Jube and the two principal Drow deities, Arkady and She, the other gods acknowledge his authority and obey his commands. In essence, this deity and our deity up top are the same person. However, notice the difference in domains. War, protection, and fire and sun. Brith is technically more powerful than our other sun deity is. But both of them exist, and it's mainly because of the worship of the more fervent. Brith is more powerful physically, but... oh god, I forget his name right now. Of course I do. Aranu is more widespread. Jube, the fearsome Jube, is pale as a corpse and has the eyes of dull red. He is utterly insane. To the elves, he symbolizes the battle madness that can take over a warrior's mind. He was the first male child of Nuith, but was found unfit to rule because of his madness. He represents the wildness that the civilized elves are proud to have outgrown. Wild elves often revere Jube, seeing in his madness a spontaneity and joy in life that is to be emulated. Jube dresses in spiked armor, whose pieces seem to have come from several different sources. It is chaotic and ill-matched, covered with chains and hooks, decorated by a checkerboard pattern in one place and grinning demon faces in the other. If you were to make any god Sheogorath, it would be Jube. He is chaotic evil, absolute insanity, and the wild elves don't worship him for his insanity, they worship him for what he symbolizes in the wild decadence. Animal, chaos, destruction, and war. Kairos, Threadcutter, is the elven god of law, reason, and exactitude. He clears away illusion and reveals truth. Those who ensure the law is kept, well, of course, in this case, the law being as loud as it is, such as city officials, lawyers, and guardsmen, worship him. Despite his intellectual prowess, he is a very popular god among warriors. He also stands for honesty and plain speaking. His title of Threadcutter refers to the legend in which he severs the tangled nets of spider thread spun by She that were holding his fellow deities immobile. Priests of Kairos, who pride themselves in their ability to come straight to the point and not waste time blowing hot air, often recall this legend. In a party of adventurers, a priest of Kairos will insist on action over debate. Kairos is depicted as a grave young man in dark clothing, wearing ornaments of office and carrying a lamp. His symbolic weapon is the rapier, adopted by the priests because of its piercing directness. Domains, of course, being law, knowledge, strength, and sun. Kairos is very, shed light on the situation kind of thing. Or if you really want to get technical, he's Judge Dredd. Lumia is the elven goddess of the moon. Now, Lumia, of course, as we have heard before, is one of the patron deities and birther of most of the gods of this pantheon. She rules the night as Brith rules the day. She was the first of the gods to emerge from the starry body of Nuith and carries more of her mother's wisdom than any of her other children. Oh, I'm sorry. Nuith is the goddess, the mother goddess, and Lumia is the kind of like the little sister goddess. Pardon me, I confused the two. She is the goddess of those who prophesize the future and has a special dominion over the hours of rest when elves enter trance. This means she is also the goddess of dreams, which often bring visions of what is to come, and of healing, which is greatly aided by sleep. The light of Lumia is also that by which night creatures hunt. She is both the protector of animals and the patroness of hunting. If an animal escapes the chase, it is said that Lumia blessed it. If the hunting party brings home meat, then thanks are given to Lumia. Finally, as the changing moon, she is a patroness of the tides of the sea. Her domains are animal, healing, knowledge, and water. And of course, her symbol is the sickle, or the crescent moon. Melmoth is also one of my favorite gods. Gaunt, saturnine Melmoth, sometimes called the king of the shreds and patches, takes the form of a male elf with black hair and scraggly tangles. His features are hollow, as if he had gone hungry for many days. His clothes are tattered and torn, and he wears a long, hooded cloak. Melmoth never rests, moving on from place to place eternally. As a god who exemplifies both magic and ceaseless wandering, he is thus the god of all those elven mages who take magic from town to town looking for employment. Think like, your traveling merchant who's like, I can do street tricks. And then also those traveling merchants who make magic items for all the adventurers. He personifies the need that many elves feel for solitude and distance from the claustrophobic nature of cities, as well as the wanderlust that draws so many of them to roam far from their homes. Followers of Melmoth typically enjoy good relations with druids as they share their respect for wild spaces. Many bards also worship him because of their wandering ways. He's a good god, very similar to our other deity of the tricksters. And his whole thing is basically, chaos, travel, knowledge, and magic. I really like Melmoth, just because he's a very interesting character. The goddess Nuith is more of a primal force than a deity. She is the starry heaven itself from which all else emerged. The elves believe her to be the mother of all earthly life, whether evil or good. That which is of Nuith is necessary to existence. Alien forces, such as the Drow, magical aberrations, or demons from other planes, are not of Nuith. They are to be feared and guarded against. Nuith does not have clerics. She is too distant and universal to be worshipped. According to legend, she only intervenes in the lives of mortals through her other children, the Starborn. Those are avatars of individual stars whose destiny it is to protect the world against the forces from outside that threaten it. In this sense, you are all avatars of Nuith. And of course, there are more than you, but those ones are not chosen specifically. Again, options for people to be added to campaigns later. That's kind of the whole concept, is these Starborn are born, but they're not common. Valkaz. Valkaz, the child free, is the goddess of warrior women. She is called the child free not because she is virginal, but because she stands for a way of life that does not involve bringing up the young. In the elven religions, women who choose a path other than that of child rearing and homemaking are respected for it. Although males may enter her service as clerics, or may enter her service, her clerics are always female. You can be a paladin of Valkaz, but you can't be a cleric if you're a male. Priestesses of Valkaz often worship her with riotous celebration that would put any men's feast to shame. While a cleric of Valkaz is engaged in active temple service, she may take as many husbands as she wishes, but may not become a mother. Should she become pregnant, she must retire from temple service until the child is born, at which event it is either given over to be adopted, or the priestess retires altogether, a much rarer event. Valkaz is depicted as a female elf dressed in leather armor, with broad shoulders and braided waist-length hair. In addition to being a goddess of war, she is the bringer of favorable winds, so it is customary for an image of Valkaz to be placed on the prow of a ship. If you ever want your, ship vanity to be anything, probably should be her. Domains, of course, air, destruction, strength, and war. And finally, for the gods of this particular group, we have Vendis. The voluptuous Vendis is the goddess of the volcano's heart. In the Castellan pantheon, she is presidency over all things fire, metal, and searing heat. She is depicted as a woman wreathed in fire, with hair the color of metals of a forge. Legends relate that when she lay down to rest in the aftermath of creation, her flaming hair spread through the cooling mantle of the earth in strands of silver and gold. Those then became the filigree threads for Vor that travel through the rock and can be restored back to metal once again with the application of her fire. Clerics of Vendis are typically weaponsmiths, armorers, and jewelers. Those who make their living working with metal rely on her blessings to prosper their trade, as she is the goddess of precious metals and of fortunes found under the earth. She is also considered to be the goddess of wealth itself, bringing good luck at the time when it is most needed. Her weapon is the trident, which resembles the flaming torch cast in metal. Clerics of Vendis have a great respect for non-evil dragons, will always assist them if they are in need, and will never assault one except in self-defense. Her domains are, of course, earth, good, fire, and luck, and she is a good deity by nature. Her entire point was to help creation. Very few evil deities exist in this universe outside of she and a few of the ones that I mentioned above, and those ones that are evil are typically more of the embodiment of the dangers of reality rather than evil incarnate. If you are evil, you aren't so much like sadistic torturer necessarily as a deity. You are more of a embodiment of not chaos, but the dangers. Omni, did you remember your description?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, give me a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, how Pyrrhus sees Wandul is in the light of the specific clause in that word. You know, the person that arrives when the dark outreaches the light. You know, almost the setter of balance in a way in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
There is the tithing to be paid and the servitude of those who trek into the shadows and face away from the light. And he sees, because of his upbringing, I think with my DM message to you, you might be able to put together how he came to be like this a bit more. I'm probably going to need to write it out even more. But he came to see himself as one of the few people prepared inadvertently from birth to pursue a path like that.
Makes
sort
sense.
of a grudging servitude to keep the darkness at bay by making sure that other people don't become engrossed in it as he naturally is. So more of a gatekeeper, which makes him lawful good instead of lawful evil while worshipping the god.
And of course, normally, the game rules do not allow for this kind of thing, so anybody who's looking to be a player making something similar to this, it might be a good idea to ask before you do it. Of course, you know, Omni did ask me and made sure that it was okay that he do this, and of course, this is an excellent idea in my opinion. I do love character concepts that are interesting and unique, but don't say, I'm Mary Sue. Gatekeepers are not really well known for being great kings or great lords, and the world doesn't bend to their will. In this case, it's just a very interesting individual take on what a deity stands for. And I'm very, very interested in how that plays out in roleplay. Which, of course, I'll be streaming this, so we'll find out, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Any questions on the deities of the Castellan Pantheon? Anybody else?
Have there been faith-based conflicts that have extended over large periods of time in this continuity?
Yes, primarily. Okay, so I guess to give kind of a quick example of the actual history of Ashfar, the elves used to be the primary colonizing, domineering force in this world. The elves are what created these sea gates. The elves are what settled the lands. The elves are what subjugated the humans. Most battles of religion or faith were caused by the split of the Castellan and the Avalon splits. These gods all exist, once again. Aranu and Brith, for example, are essentially the same thing. They just are different interpretations and beliefs of it. This, of course, has led to friction between the elves and the humans and the other races of the world, very commonly, because Aranu is more well-known, but Brith is more powerful, whatever. These are not common, but there are a couple of kind of ongoing debates, especially among theologians in the universe, that cause serious friction. Another example, of course, is Farina and our goddess warrior princess, whatever the hell her name is, I'm sorry, Valkaz. They are both symbolic of the warrior woman, the powerful individual, I guess I want to say feminist individual, who is incredibly capable and powerful, but is not bound by the traditional homemaking, child-rearing nature of medieval technology. Ironically, that same fire is what led to war between these individuals and their clerics. But most of the time the wars aren't as bloody as people might think, since Zoth Sarandai is capable of stopping almost any war that erupts between countries that are far enough away. Usually it would take months or even years to actually traverse the oceans to get to there, and traveling your armies across continents really isn't fun. So it's not very common to see humongous wars break out, but there are crusades of sorts. They just are typically a bit more self-contained. Any other questions from our other listeners? Maybe you, Mr. Barrel Rider, or Avion? Or maybe he's gone at the moment. And anything from you, Joe?
No, I think I'm good so far.
Good enough. All right. Next up will be the creation legend. Now, this, of course, there are notes for the Game Master specifically in this portion here, so I'm going to keep those aside. And the creation of She, the goddess of the spiders and the goddess of the drow. She is incredibly dangerous and is very interesting. Now, I'll give you guys the entire legend, of course, because this is important, and any elves in the party will automatically know this. Anybody who has any history of religion, especially our cleric, Kazuko, will probably know this as well. The creation of She is a central elven legend. Brith, the sun god, the second born of Nuith, star goddess, was originally deemed unworthy to hold the throne of the elven gods. He was a proven warrior, and his courage was unquestionable, but the seeress Lumia proclaimed that by his nature contained a weakness, an evil. Given time, this evil might grow to consume him. While Brith was still not pure in body and soul, he would not be worthy of the responsibility that was to be. The outward sign of this evil within him was his left hand. The body of Brith was beautiful and well proportioned, but the left hand was dark and hook-nailed, the back of it covered with coarse hairs as if it belonged to something else. Thus, the Sun Lord Brith went into the deserts of sand to search his soul and judge whether he was worthy to be a true king of all. After 30 nights of wandering and meditation, he made his decision. If there was evil within him, he would cut it out. This was his warrior's mind speaking. Another might have tried to come to terms with the evil, to overcome it by force of will, but not Brith. In a single moment, he drew his sword and hacked his left hand off at the wrist and flung it with a curse down to the rocky ravine into the darkness where it belonged. Brith returned to his fellow gods who welcomed him. Only Lumia was silent, knowing that the evil had not been overcome, but merely moved to a place where no one could see it. Gods are immortal. Their body parts are no less immortal, whether they are attached or not. The left hand of Brith, still living, still evil, watched in the darkness. It pulsed slowly, realizing that it was free. For the first time, it was itself. The fingers elongated, new ones exuded in spindly lengths from the wet stump. 4 thin, bony fingers wavered feebly beside a stubby thumb, like some horrible birth deformity. The fingers and thumb thickened, darkening in to match the rest of the skin. A single hand had become 2, fused at the wrists. The knuckles of the thumbs congealed together, forming a bulbous head. Their curved claws clicked as they met and became inward-pointing jaws. As the body gained mass and the fingers became longer and thinner, the black hair that had covered the back of the hand now sprouted over the whole creature. She, the devouring spider goddess, was born. The evil that the sun god cut away from himself and cast into darkness. In the darkness, the spider creature found comfort and strength. She soothed her burning wounds in the cool, lightless air. Life was already beginning to breed in her bulbous belly, away from Brith. Who was shielded by the influence of stars. She was absorbed in darkness into herself, and fed it into her growing eggs like mother's milk. Her children would shun light, even as she did. When the time came for the stars to send their ambassadors to Earth, they would be opposed. The darkness, too, would be a voice. It would speak through her spawn. She is known. Elves especially know that she exists and are aware of the dangers that she represents. She is, well, as people would say, Lulth. Lulth is actually a lot different than she. She is a pure evil, like neutral evil. And whereas Lulth is lawful, Drow are not. And unlike dark elves in most mythologies, the Drow of this universe are almost indescribably evil. They do not have any redeeming qualities about them. They work together out of necessity. They act like Skaven. They destroy and devour and enshroud everything they can. To be a Drow in this universe is to be damned by the gods. And there is no redemption. And despite many players wanting to have a Drow design, a character that is, despite being born of the evil, redeemable, is, well, noble, but is impossible, at least in the way that this is described. If pure evil is separated from pure good, the only thing that can exist is the pure evil and the pure good. That's why Brith is neutral good. That's why she is neutral evil. And that's why being part Drow is, well, overwhelming and disgusting. Not to be like horribly racist in that situation. That's just how this universe's mythology is designed. It makes it very fantasy-esque. It makes it pure light and dark. And that's a very serious topic, of course, because people tend to, like, they want the underdogs, the bad guy, to redeem themselves in some way, and that's nigh impossible here.
Yeah, at best you're gonna get like a Drow who might be a little bit hopeful to get something out of the bargain, only to be swiftly decapitated once the task is done for them and they think they have the upper.
Absolutely.
That is how the Drow do.
Mm-hmm. And that's part of the terror of this system. You know, it's all part of its thing. I swear I'm going to have Styx watch this stream because, like, I'm wondering if he's done any of the reading. All right.
I'm glad I made kind of like a more solemn and kind of more sojourn character. You know, one sort of acclimated to, you know, cold, long, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as part of his introduction to becoming a paladin of Wandul, taking himself into the Arctic colds to essentially temper himself and his soul for that task. You know,
yes.
It's definite that, you know, inheriting his father's halberd, you know, the name Pyrrhus, which I've already got. If we ever sit near a campfire, I'm already collecting stories that I'm going to tell as Pyrrhus. You know, about that, about his name, about, you know, the Drow, and the fact that that is probably the one thing him and his father could agree on over all those years, besides what whip to use when he misbehaved.
Jesus. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, in a world like this, it isn't out of the question for a orcish father to attempt to compensate for a half-orc son being half-orc.
Absolutely not. And that's totally understandable. Like, the design of the character is meant to be very somber, and I like the idea. Again, part of the reason why I accepted it as a paladin, because it's like an internal journey to himself just as much as it is to create a difference in the gods that only comes from a true schism, especially if it's perpetrated by somebody who's not traditionally a worshiper of said deity. Again, very fun idea all the way around. And I love character concepts that are entertaining, but not Mary Sue.
I like to make characters with darker notes, you may know.
Yeah, totally.
Just from, I'm making, the whole TGW project, which is just my own little world building, whatever.
You're good.
If I don't use dark themes, then... yeah, man, that world wouldn't come together half as good as it has.
Mm-hmm. Ironically, this universe isn't that grimdark, other than the Drow.
The Drow are very grimdark.
But the
a tempering note on the steel of the world.
Yeah, it's kind of its own thing, and it's cool to have a brand of sorts to signify it as its own unique thing. Now, of course, the deities of the darkness. This is something that typically is only shared with clerics who are elven, because typically she isn't talked about, and Arcady is not talked about in the human pantheons. They know of the basic legend, they know who she is, but they don't know what she is. They just know that they exist. Yeah. So I will leave it alone, because I'm fairly certain we don't have any elves in the party. At the moment, anyway. We have a half-orc, 2 humans, and an Ismar. And of course, our Ismar is our deity worshipper, and I believe they are going to pick Aranu as their patron. Either that or Brith. If they pick Brith, it's possible that they will know the story of She. Obviously, Kazuka will probably know the legend of She, but that might be a different thing from the actual description of the deity. You know, legends.
Pyrrhus know from his father, seeing as his father wasn't human.
I doubt it, because the orcs they're not really subservient to the Drow. The Drow live in the Underdark, of course, and the Underdark exists underneath the world in this universe. They are kind of the Watchers of the Dark, whereas orcs tend to be a lot more of a, barbaric, might makes right kind of tribe on the surface, or partially subterranean, but I wouldn't call them anything else, if that makes sense. So probably not, but at the same time, it's kind of a toss-up.
It's not hard to imagine certain tales of upbringing where so and so ended up being bait for this,
Mm-hmm.
to the wolves, but someone got there first.
Yeah.
All we found were bones, You want to end up like that, Pyrrhus?
Oh my god. Jeez. Of course.
That's how his upbringing is not supposed to be the good part of his life.
Totally understandable. And of course, considering his birth signs and everything, he might be kind of a brash individual, but hopefully he's able to temper that with his paladin training. And I'll get more details about him as it goes along.
You're cutting out a little bit, or maybe I'm cutting out a little bit?
It's probably my microphone being stupid with Discord.
Okay, so I heard something I think you may have said burnout?
No, I said basically that he would be able to overcome his problems that he might have via the lens of his paladinhood and his patience that he has as being a gatekeeper.
Oh yeah, the temperance is essentially it's going to be an ongoing thing, but from the start it's essentially kind of turning a new leaf through that paladinhood to take the negativity, the hatred, the roiling blood that is, the orcish blood as a racial trait, and turning it on its head to where, where I can know rage innately, I can actively find peace.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that peace makes me strong.
You're not Osmar at all. You're like the opposite. It's kind of interesting. You weren't born a man of the cloth. You were made a man of the cloth, as it were. Which is very interesting. Okay. Any questions from Avion or Joe at the moment about anything?
You said something about like running quote-unquote simulations or something before we really got into the main content, so we could get used to everything as it ran.
This, of course, is rule sets that I was talking about, not necessarily the universe as a whole, but yes. Because most of my players are 5th edition veterans who are moving into 3.5 as part of this entire campaign setting.
Oh man, I'm probably going to be the freshest blood in the party. Hope I don't disappoint.
I mean, you'll probably be fine. You are the freshest member of my server and also the newest member of the group, but that's not a big deal. It, of course, just means, like, don't put too high of expectations for yourself, because we're all bloody nerds here. Like, I'm being serious during the stream, of course, but I run a pretty lighthearted game. You heard what I did on the other day.
Yeah.
Antlion Rider.
I thoroughly enjoyed listening to that.
I try as a DM to be... Well, I'm fairly friendly in that regard. Most of the time, I'm willing to entertain almost any concept you have, as long as it's not... I want to be good at everything.
I found a reason for Pierce's name as I looked more into his character, not just, as the fact that I did pull the TGW name. But, actually, hey, why would Pierce have the name Pierce? It's a very unusual name.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mark of shame.
Ooh, interesting. That's actually really interesting.
Guess who gave him that name?
His father,
I bet
probably?
you couldn't guess.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it 100%.
An only son, his father said he was a Pyrrhic victory at best for his bloodline.
Oof.
And so his mother called him Pyrrhus, and his father never allowed another name.
Alright then, damn.
Yeah.
That's, wow. Alright.
I was thinking that, his father could be a symbolic, almost an Ingram of the racial pride and rage,
Mm-hmm.
Not the typical orc in the way, like, I don't expect every orc to be that hot-tempered and rage-bound, but, having had a halberd, the hate for drow, I'm imagining a more grizzled father coming back to see a half-orc child, and just thinking to himself, this is the person who has to fight tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's disappointing.
Makes sense. And of course, again, I love the concept behind it. We're going to have to explore the character in detail, of course, and make our own character moments out of it. Try not to overshadow, of course. Anybody who wants to do their own character moments kind of have their turn in the spotlight, and I'll try to make sure that gets handled.
Yeah, I'm making sure that Pyrrhus has his backstory settled so that I can play more subtly, because Pyrrhus is not... I talk about him a good bit, but he's probably not going to be the most voicey character in the party, far from it. Good diplomacy, not many words.
Sure, that's understandable.
He's more of a calming voice in the party, instead of, he will take charge, but...
Right. It's understandable.
He's the guy who would probably just make sure everything is going okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, jeez. Alright. Okay, so far so good, just to make sure we've got all the main stuff figured out. Oh, I did need to do background information for all the countries, didn't I? Whoops. Oh well. We can do that next time, actually. I gave a quick synopsis of the island. Where you guys are from, we can do tomorrow. Yeah, I can do tomorrow before I go to work. And we'll go from there. Of course, it's been an hour and a half in the session already, I think. Let's see. Yep, an hour and a half almost exactly. So as part of that main stream, just to get the basic information about the setting out of the way, and then send the video to you nerds so you can watch it and get the deities and the important information that you need to know about your star signs out of the way, plus signature items and all that crap. I'll be doing more individual stuff with my players as we go forward, and whenever the sessions begin, it'll of course be Drow of Ashfar, or Ashfar campaign, and we'll be working forward from there. I might upload this on YouTube as well, I'm not sure yet. We'll figure it out. Anyway, for the stream watchers, of course, if there are any, I'm logging off of that right now. And have a good one.